Stop for a second. If you have ever woken up, checked your blood sugar, and wondered how it could possibly be higher after a full night of not eating anything, what I am about to explain may completely change how you think about your body. For more than 20 years as a surgeon, I watched patients do everything they were told to do. They cut sugar, they counted carbohydrates, they followed strict meal plans, they took every medication exactly as prescribed, and yet, morning after morning, their glucose numbers kept creeping up, higher than expected, higher than last year, sometimes higher than the night before. And the most frustrating part? Many of them were doing everything right. Now here's the part most people never hear. You are not failing your body, and your body is not randomly betraying you. In many cases, the real problem is happening quietly while you sleep. All night long, your body is releasing small amounts of glucose into your bloodstream to keep your brain and organs functioning. This process is completely normal. In fact, it is necessary for survival. But in millions of people, something subtle begins to change inside the cells that are supposed to respond to insulin. The signal arrives, but the cells stop listening. Not because of a slice of bread you ate yesterday, not because you skipped a workout, but because the environment surrounding those cells slowly changes over time. Inflammation builds, cell membranes lose flexibility, and the delicate communication system that controls blood sugar begins to break down. Here's the surprising part. Some of the most powerful ways to support that system do not start with medications or complicated diets. They start with something far simpler, something most people already have in their kitchen. Certain natural oils contain compounds that directly influence inflammation, cellular signaling, and the way your body responds to insulin overnight. Used correctly, they can help support the exact systems that determine whether you wake up with stable glucose or a number that leaves you frustrated before the day even begins. And today, I am going to walk you through 3 specific oils that researchers have been studying for their impact on blood sugar regulation, metabolic health, and insulin sensitivity. The third one in particular has produced results that surprised even experienced clinicians. So stay with me because by the end of this video, you may start looking at your morning glucose readings very differently. I am Dr. Megan Foster. I spent over 20 years working as a surgeon treating patients dealing with cardiovascular disease, metabolic conditions, and the long-term complications that develop after years of blood sugar imbalance. Complications that in many cases could have been slowed or even avoided with better early information. And in all of that time, one pattern became impossible to ignore. Most people are working on the wrong problem. They are told to focus almost entirely on what they eat. Cut the sugar, reduce the carbs, avoid fruit. And while those dietary adjustments have their place, they miss the deeper issue entirely. Blood sugar problems are not just about sugar intake. That is the oversimplified version of the story. The real drivers are often things like chronic inflammation quietly building inside blood vessels and tissues over years. Cells that have gradually lost their sensitivity to insulin, not because of one bad meal, but because of sustained inflammatory pressure over time. A progressive breakdown in the very systems that are supposed to be absorbing and managing glucose efficiently. And in many cases, a liver that is not releasing stored glucose the way it should overnight, which means something that very few people are ever told. Sometimes the difference between stable blood sugar and unstable blood sugar is not simply about removing foods from your plate. Sometimes it is about actively supporting the biological systems that process and regulate glucose, giving those systems the right raw materials so they can do the work they are designed to do. And that is exactly where certain dietary fats have started attracting serious and growing scientific attention. Now, before we go any further, I want to check in with you. If you are comfortable, drop your first name and your age in the comments below. One of the most encouraging things about conversations like this is seeing how many people across so many different decades of life are actively working toward better metabolic health. 30-year-olds trying to get ahead of a family history. 50-year-olds who are seeing numbers shift for the first time. 70-year-olds who want to protect their cardiovascular health for the years ahead. All asking the same questions, all doing the work. If you take a moment to scroll through the comments, you will quickly realize you are not alone in this. All right, let me explain what is actually happening inside the body when blood sugar becomes difficult to manage. And I am going to do this without complicated medical terminology because this concept should be clear to everyone, regardless of your background. Think of glucose regulation, like traffic moving through a city. Glucose is the fuel. It is the cars on the road. Every time you eat, more cars enter the city. Your body needs to direct those cars efficiently to the right destinations, mainly into your muscle cells in your liver, where the energy can actually be used and stored properly. Insulin is the traffic signal system. It is what tells the cells throughout your body to open their doors and let the fuel inside. When everything is working properly, the signals are clear, traffic flows, cars reach their destinations, energy gets used, the whole system runs smoothly. But here is what happens when inflammation begins to build up inside the body over months and years. The traffic signals start to malfunction. The cells begin to stop responding to the signals the way they should. The doors stay closed even when insulin is knocking on them. So glucose, the fuel, keeps circulating in the bloodstream instead of entering the cells where it belongs. It builds up. It piles up like gridlock, spreading through the entire city. That buildup is what shows up as elevated blood sugar on a test. It is not necessarily that there is too much fuel entering the city. It is that the fuel cannot get where it needs to go because the communication and routing system is breaking down. So the goal is not just reducing how much fuel enters the city. The goal is repairing the traffic signal system, restoring the responsiveness of the cells, reducing the gridlock, getting the whole system communicating clearly again. And this is precisely where the research on certain dietary compounds starts to become genuinely important. Here is something that most people do not realize about inflammation. It does not announce itself. There is no fever, no obvious pain. Low-grade chronic inflammation is quiet. It operates in the background of your biology for years, sometimes decades, without producing symptoms you can easily identify. And all the while, it is slowly changing how your cells respond to the signals your body sends them. By the time the numbers on a test reflect the problem, the process has often been underway for a long time. This is why nutritional strategies that target inflammation can matter so much more than they appear to. You are not just changing a number. You are addressing one of the actual root causes of why those numbers shifted in the first place. Large nutritional studies conducted over many years have consistently shown something fascinating. Populations that follow Mediterranean-style diets, diets that are rich in specific plant oils, natural fats, abundant vegetables, and whole foods, show significantly lower rates of metabolic problems and type 2 diabetes compared to populations consuming more processed and inflammatory dietary patterns. One major long-term study involving more than 7,000 participants found that diets centered around healthy plant oils produced meaningful, measurable improvements in markers related to metabolic health and how well the body uses insulin. Not because of one single ingredient, not because of one dramatic dietary change, but because specific nutrients were consistently supporting the systems responsible for keeping metabolic balance functioning the way it should. Now, here is something that I think deserves its own moment. Think back 10 or 15 years. Think about the morning routine you had back then. Did you ever wake up and immediately worry about your blood sugar? Did you check a number before you even put your feet on the floor? For most people, the answer is no. You ate dinner. You went to sleep. Your body handled the overnight process quietly. You never thought about it. But today, millions of people wake up, and the very first thing they do is check a number. And that number does not always match the effort they put in. It does not always reflect the careful choices they made the evening before. And that disconnect between the effort and the outcome is genuinely one of the most demoralizing parts of dealing with blood sugar instability. It leads people to feel like something is fundamentally broken inside their body. Like no matter what they do, it is not enough. Like the battle is already lost. But here is what I need you to hear clearly, because this is one of the most important things in this entire conversation. This shift is not inevitable, and it is not irreversible. Your metabolism is not a fixed machine that simply wears out on a schedule. The pathways that regulate blood sugar are dynamic. They respond to inputs. They adapt to the environment you create for them. Nutrition, sleep quality, physical movement, the inflammatory load you are carrying or reducing, the specific compounds you consistently provide through the foods you eat. All of these things send signals to your metabolic systems every single day, and your biology listens. This is the foundational principle behind what we are discussing today. In a moment, I am going to walk you through 3 specific oils that researchers have studied for their potential role in supporting insulin sensitivity, reducing the inflammatory pressure that disrupts glucose regulation, and improving the way cells receive and respond to metabolic signals. The first oil is widely known, but most people are not using it in the way that makes it most valuable. The second one genuinely surprises most people when they hear about it. Most people in Western countries have never considered it at all. And the third is considered by many researchers to be one of the most powerful plant-based sources available for supporting metabolic and inflammatory balance over the long term. Stay with me because we are going through each one in real depth, not just the names, not just the headlines, but what the research actually shows, why they work the way they do inside the body, and exactly how to incorporate them practically into your daily routine. Let us start with number 3, extra virgin olive oil. Now, most people hear olive oil and immediately think of it as just a healthier cooking fat, a better alternative to processed vegetable oil or butter, something you drizzle on a salad or use to sauté vegetables. And while that is accurate, thinking about it that way misses what makes extra virgin olive oil genuinely significant from a metabolic standpoint. The key compound inside extra virgin olive oil is something called oleic acid. It is a monounsaturated fat which simply describes the structure of the fat molecule. But what matters here is not the chemistry. It is what oleic acid actually does once it is inside your body. Your cells are surrounded by membranes. Every single cell in your body. Think of a cell membrane like the outer wall of a building. Everything that enters or exits the cell has to interact with that wall in some way. And the quality of that wall is not fixed. It is directly influenced by what you eat, because the fats you consume get incorporated into those membranes. When your cell membranes are built with healthy fats like oleic acid, they remain flexible and fluid. They function the way they are designed to function. And this matters enormously for blood sugar regulation because insulin receptors, the tiny structures embedded in those membranes that receive insulin signals, work far more effectively when the surrounding membrane is flexible and healthy. When the signal arrives and the membrane is in good shape, the receptor responds. The cell opens its door. Glucose enters. Energy is used. The traffic flows. When the membrane is stiff, rigid, or composed of lower quality fats from processed foods, those receptors struggle to do their job properly. The insulin signal becomes harder to receive. Cells become less responsive over time. This is a direct structural contribution to insulin resistance that most people never hear about. Now, here is where it gets more significant. This membrane flexibility applies not just to muscle cells in your arms and legs, but to cells in your liver, your fat tissue, and your blood vessel walls. Every cell that participates in glucose management is affected by the quality of fats in its membrane, which means the impact of AIC acid is system-wide, not localized to one tissue or one organ. But oleic acid is only part of what makes extra virgin olive oil interesting. High-quality extra virgin olive oil also contains a family of compounds called polyphenols. These are natural plant antioxidants. What they do is help protect the interior of your blood vessels from oxidative stress, which is essentially a form of slow, ongoing cellular damage that accumulates in tissues over time. Oxidative stress is one of the key mechanisms that drives both chronic inflammation and the gradual development of insulin resistance. There is also a specific polyphenol found in extra virgin olive oil called oleoanthol that researchers have been studying closely. Oleoanthol has been shown to have anti-inflammatory effects that work through some of the same biological pathways as common anti-inflammatory medications, but in a gentler food-based way. The fact that a single oil influences inflammation through multiple different compounds simultaneously is part of why the research on it is so consistent. One study published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that diets consistently rich in extra virgin olive oil improved what researchers call endothelial function, which refers to the health and responsiveness of the inner lining of blood vessels. It also improved several markers directly connected to metabolic health and insulin sensitivity. The effect was not dramatic or immediate. It was cumulative and consistent, which is exactly the pattern we see with meaningful nutritional interventions. Here's the practical side of this. Extra virgin olive oil does not require dramatic changes to how you eat. Drizzle it over roasted vegetables after they come out of the oven. Use it as the base for salad dressings. Finish cooked grain dishes with a light drizzle before serving. Combine it consistently with fiber-rich foods because dietary fiber slows the absorption of glucose and the two work synergistically together. But there is one common mistake that people make with high-quality olive oil that quietly destroys many of its most beneficial properties. Overheating it. Extra virgin olive oil has a relatively low smoke point compared to refined oils. When you heat it past that threshold, you break down the delicate polyphenol compounds and some of the oleic acid properties that make it metabolically valuable. For high-heat cooking methods like frying or high-temperature roasting, a different oil is more appropriate. For dressings, cold applications, moderate heat, and finishing dishes, extra virgin olive oil is excellent. And quality matters here. The label extra virgin is not always regulated consistently, so look for oils that have a harvest date on the bottle, preferably within the last 12 months, and that come in dark glass bottles to protect the polyphenols from light degradation. Consistency is the critical factor. A tablespoon or two daily, used regularly as part of your overall dietary pattern, is where research suggests the meaningful benefits begin to compound. Not occasional use, regular daily incorporation. All right, let us move to number 2. And this one genuinely catches people off guard. Black seed oil. Most people in Western countries have never heard of this, but black seed oil has been used in traditional medicine systems across the Middle East, South Asia, and North Africa for over 2,000 years. And in recent decades, modern nutritional science has started taking it seriously. Black seed oil comes from a plant called Nigella sativa. The seeds from this plant are sometimes also called black cumin or kalonji, depending on the region. The oil extracted from these seeds contains a particularly remarkable compound called thioquinone. Thioquinone is the compound that keeps showing up in research studies on black seed oil. Multiple published studies have demonstrated that it has strong anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. And given what we have already discussed about how chronic inflammation disrupts insulin signaling and damages the traffic signal system in the body, reducing that inflammatory burden through nutritional support may meaningfully improve how well cells respond to insulin over time. But what makes black seed oil especially interesting in the specific context of blood sugar is a more targeted mechanism. Some research suggests that thymosinone may influence how the liver manages and releases stored glucose, particularly during the overnight fasting period. And this is directly relevant to one of the most frustrating experiences for people managing blood sugar, which is waking up to an elevated reading after hours of not eating. Here is why this happens and why it matters. Your liver stores glucose in a form called glycogen. Think of it as a glucose reservoir. Overnight, while you're not eating, the liver is supposed to release glucose gradually and steadily to maintain your energy and keep blood sugar stable while you sleep. In people with healthy metabolic function, this process is tightly regulated and precise. But in people with insulin resistance or significant metabolic inflammation, this overnight release process can become dysregulated. The liver releases too much glucose too quickly or continues releasing glucose when it is not needed. This is one of the primary reasons why morning fasting blood sugar readings can be elevated even after 8, 9, or even 10 hours of fasting with no food intake at all. There is also something else happening in the liver called gluconeogenesis. This is the process by which the liver creates new glucose from non-carbohydrate sources like amino acids. In a healthy system, this is carefully controlled. But when inflammation is high and insulin resistance is present, the liver can produce and release glucose through this pathway even when blood sugar is already elevated. It is the liver continuing to add fuel to a road that is already gridlocked. When metabolic inflammation decreases, both the glycogen release and this glucose creation process tend to regulate more naturally. And this dual mechanism may help explain why some people who use black seed oil consistently report improvements in their morning fasting readings specifically. I want to be careful and precise here because accuracy matters more than enthusiasm when it comes to health information. The research on black seed oil and blood sugar is genuinely promising, and it is growing. But in terms of volume and long-term consistency of evidence, it is not yet at the same level. I will see you in the next discussion.